Did you ever dream of traveling the world but do not think it's possible? Perhaps because it is hard to save money to travel to your dream destination. What if I tell you that you can actually travel for much cheaper? So make sure to subscribe to my channel, because this is a series of 3 videos, and you definitely don't want to miss any tips I am about to explain, especially if you want to travel to Europe one day. The idea here is that if you can spend less money on certain areas when you're traveling, you can end up going on more trips, or stay longer at your destination. You can end up going to very cool destinations, and stay for several weeks, if not months, hopping from one destination to the next. All the information you need to save money on your trips is divided into 3 topics that correspond to 3 videos. This video is part 1. So make sure you hit the notification bell to be notified about the other 2 videos, which are essential for you to travel the world. By watching the other 2 videos, you will learn tricks, how to book accommodation at fantastic prices, and how to get hold of inexpensive, or even possibly free food during your vacation to Europe. In this video, I will deep dive into transportation. We will first start talking about how you're actually getting to your destination. So let's start by first talking about one of the first things you do when starting your journey, and that is finding a flight. My advice is genuinely about how to actually get cheap flights, and you can do this if you follow this video, as I will share with you all the hacks you need to get cheap flights, and a super tip that few people do, and can help you get the best prices. So, let's get started, shall we? Tip No. 1. Use price comparison sites such as Cheap.air. What do you need to do to get cheap flights? Using a service that is really going to get you the best prices. You can go online and use price comparison sites depending on your preference. My personal preference is Cheap.air. I am going to leave a link for you in the description below, because I find the cheapest prices on this site. But there are a few other things that are really important and that you need to take into consideration to get cheap flights. This brings me to my next tip. Tip number 2, book a one-way ticket instead of booking round trip. Book a one-way ticket instead of booking round trip, because that way in some cases it can be cheaper to fly to different cities and schedule different layovers on your own, rather than just kind of relying on these flight checkers to do it for you. Let's take a trip to Italy as an example. Book a one-way flight from LA to Rome rather than a return flight to and from Rome. You might want to spend a couple of weeks traveling around Italy with so much to see and do. Italy certainly does have much to offer: spectacular cities, ancient ruins, wonderful museums, soaring mountains, great beaches, and beautiful natural scenery. One of the great joys of traveling through Italy is discovering firsthand that it is, indeed, a dream destination. The top 3 cities are Rome, Venice, and Florence. I travel to Italy on regular basis, and although I love Rome and think that Venice is amazing, I still find the charm of Florence irresistible and can never stop going back. The city of Renaissance. Florence is loaded with wonderful art, architecture, and some of the finest museums in the world, the Uffizi and the Galleria dell'Accademia. Florence truly is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Why am I saying this? Because if you fly from far away and plan to visit Florence just for a day, you will realize that you made a mistake, and if you want to thoroughly explore Italy, booking one-way flights to different cities might be something you want to consider to make the most of your trip. At the end of your trip you will have a one-way flight booked from Milan instead of Rome, and you could plan your itinerary from Rome to Milan with stops in between to explore this amazing country. Check out my channel for tips and ideas where to visit and to discover all the must-see places in Tuscany and Italy in general. Tip number 3, carefully selecting the right airports. Carefully select the airports you travel to and travel from. A great tip is to try to find an airport around you that is pretty big. Say that you have 2 airports both equally distant from where you're living right now. One of them is a major international airport and the other one is a smaller airport. You're generally going to find cheaper flights at the bigger airports. Say I live close to London, but there is a smaller airport closer to my house. I'm better off traveling to London Heathrow because I'm more likely to find cheaper flights from the bigger airport. I think this is pretty straightforward, right? Because at bigger airports you are more likely to find more flights and the chances of finding cheaper flights increase. Tip number 4. Be flexible on your travel dates. Okay, so say you want to leave to great adventure soon. If you have a fixed date, you're gonna have to take whatever is available and in general end up spending more. If you are restricted to a particular date, the likelihood is that you are going to end up spending more money. But on the other hand, if you're flexible and can pick a day when the flight is cheaper, you can get a better deal for your outbound flight. Being flexible will allow you to fly at ridiculously cheap prices. Tip number 5: be flexible on your destination to get real bargain flights. Being flexible on your travel dates is going to save you some money, but if you combine this with being flexible on your destination, will grant you a sure deal. Enter the departure city you wish to fly from. Set the airport near you that has the largest range of available routes, both international and domestic. In the destination box, mark to type in everywhere. You can rest assured that you will bag yourself a bargain if you follow these tips. Search flights to anywhere in the app. Tip number 6: be open to opportunities. Explore the destinations listed in the page result. Be open to different destinations. Just look at the results and be open to opportunities. Sometimes you can end up in places that you never would have otherwise thought you would go. For example, you might have the idea of leaving on a flight to Rome, but you come across a very cheap flight to Naples. Hop on the cheapest flight and start exploring the area surrounding that cheap flight destination. This is how you get to visit amazing destinations at a pretty cheap price. Tip number 7: don't wait to book. If you know when and where you're going, do not wait to book. Rarely ever do airline tickets get cheaper as your departure date approaches, especially if you need to fly on a certain date. Budget airlines typically offer low rates as a baseline price, and as these tickets sell, the remaining ones increase in cost. This is very typical, especially in Europe. If you know when and where you are going to travel to, do not wait. More often than not, your biggest savings come from booking far ahead. Tip number 8: avoid traveling on weekends. So another thing you can do to hop on that cheap flight, apart from being flexible about your date and destination, is to be flexible when it comes to the days on which you will be traveling. In general, traveling on a weekday would give you a far cheaper flight than traveling on the weekend. So say leaving on Wednesday might land you on a cheaper ticket than if you had to travel on a Friday night, when most people would choose to travel for their weekend breaks. Tip number 9: avoid traveling around popular holidays, say right before New Year for instance, when many people will be traveling, and flights will be more expensive. Find the times when less people are traveling. A great time like the fall, October or November, would be pretty cheap as compared to the holiday period. And because you're watching this video till the end, I am going to give you my super tip. Top tip number 10: keep your searches incognito. You're not crazy for thinking that a flight price has changed after searching it a few times in your web browser. Based on the cookies in your browser, flight prices do increase when a particular route is repeatedly searched, as the site wants to scare you into booking the flight quickly before prices get even higher. Always search for flights in incognito or private browsing mode to see the lowest prices. In Google Chrome or Safari, incognito is enabled by hidden command, or control if using PC, Shift-N, for Mozilla Firefox or Internet Explorer, hit command, or control if using a PC, Shift-P. This will open a new browser window where your information is not tracked, thus not inflating prices as you search. Your cookies are reset each time you reopen an incognito window. So if you want to start with a clean slate for each flight search, so your previous searches aren't remembered, potentially inflating costs, close all your incognito windows, open a new one, and then perform your flight search. You are welcome. I just saved you some money. This the end of part 1: travel tips for cheaper traveling. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, hit the like button and watch part 2, which will give you tips how to get inexpensive accommodation, and I even have a super tip for you how to get free accommodation, and another super tip which you will discover when you watch part 2. This super tip will explain how you might actually make some money during your trip to Europe. So hit that subscribe button now and watch part 2. You can also support this channel by becoming a member, and we will give you freebies including an ebook on how to save money. Bye bye for now. And see you in the next video.